should already be clear by the content on this channel and by my entire personality if you know me in real life, but I am deeply in love with planning things. I would rather plan things than do things most of the time. Like 95% of the time. I would just rather plan things, not do them. I don't like doing things. My idea of making friends is showing people my planner. It sounds really nerdy, and it is, but I've actually made long-lasting friendships with this method, so I stand by it. The point of all this is, girl loves her planners. I also love keeping my planners. My idea of an ideal planner has also changed a lot over the years, so I thought it might be kind of interesting to show you how that evolution has taken place. There's a lot of different planning systems out there, and I am not under any illusion that my perfect system is your perfect system. We all have different needs, so I know that my ideal planner will not be your ideal one. However, maybe my walking through all of these will kind of encourage you to think about your own planning system. Maybe it'll give you some insight into how needs change over years and different circumstances. Or maybe it'll just give you a chance to be a bit of a voyeur and see how a real person uses these planners. It may not have been pretty, but they did help me get shit done. So that's what matters, right? Okay, enough chit chat, let's get into it. Okay, so for these first two, you just have to know that these are only part of my planning system. These are literally just calendars that I bought from the $1 to $3 section at Target. They're like the equivalent of one of those desktop calendars, like the blotter things, but these are more portable. They would work in conjunction with a notebook like this one, which I actually used in the beginning of 2019, but it works for illustrative purposes here. So this calendar would hold all of my longer term stuff like appointments, homework deadlines, flights, etc. So you can see this in this 2015 one, and then that becomes even clearer in this 2016 one when I was really using this calendar to kind of plan things into the future. This little notebook, however, would hold the stuff that I had to get done on that particular day. I needed this little daily notebook because clearly there's not enough space in this calendar to write down all the things I needed to remember to do. And I needed the calendar because the daily notebook won't give me more than 24 hours in advance. The downside of this method, of course, is that I have to carry 2 calendars with me at all times. The calendar guide's pretty large too, so it's less portable than some of the other options out there. This system did get me by for quite a while though, and I did use it for several years. As you can see at the end of this one though, I really stopped using this planner entirely when I started at Columbia. During my first semester there, so the last 4 to 5 months of 2016, I just got by with my Apple Calendar for my classes. I also added deadlines there, as well as any social events, plus writing random daily lists on my school notebooks. I didn't keep any of those, but just imagine random to-do lists everywhere, like in the margins of my class notes, and that's exactly what it was. Surprising to no one, this system did not work for me. I never knew where my lists were, there wasn't accountability, and I'm truly not sure how more things didn't fall through the cracks. It took way more of my energy to be aware of all my tasks and deadlines and to continuously check on them because I didn't have a system for them. I scraped along for 2 full semesters at Columbia like this somehow, and then around May of 2017, I heard about the cult phenomena that is bullet journaling. I was in a couple Facebook groups of bullet journalers, and I started to really get into the idea because it was so customizable. And let me explain. You don't see any pre-printed planners here in my stack of old planners, since pre-printed ones have never worked for me. Those usually have the same layout. A full week sits on 2 pages, and each day only has a couple lines for tasks. They're usually these crunched little boxes that don't give you much space, and it's like, am I supposed to write down like 3 things and then forget about the rest of them? I know that these work for a lot of people, but they've never worked for me. I like to put everything into my planner, including stuff like washing my hair, doing a face mask, or taking my vitamins, which means I need a lot of space for tasks. And when I had mountains of homework to do every day too, That meant that those pre-printed planners were so restrictive as to be completely useless to me. So bullet journaling, in contrast, really called my name. I could create my own planner from the ground up, and it could be exactly what I wanted with nothing extraneous and nothing wasted. So I ordered this personalized dotted notebook from Moleskine and started it off in June 2017. At the start, I tried to copy the traditional bullet journal monthly layout, but as you'll see, this is the only month I did this. An actual calendar view with boxes for each day works so much better for me, so that's how I went with it going forward. I really did just end up mostly using my digital calendar for events though. That way I'd be reminded by my devices, plus I could add an address or any other information to the event to make my life a bit easier. I also had habit trackers for each month, which I used to be good at updating. I'm no longer good at updating them, so I no longer use them. I also had this big overall task list here, and this is actually something that I would transfer over month to month. As you can imagine, this got real old real fast. I played around with some different daily layouts, but basically ended up sticking to a 1 page per day thing. Sometimes I felt bad about that though, because I ended up with a lot of blank space at the bottom of those pages. So sometimes I put 2 days on the same page. That meant that I couldn't start putting stuff on the next day's list until that day though. So that was pretty irritating. I also had some random lists interspersed in with my daily lists, which was frustrating. I didn't make an index for this journal as is usually recommended, but I stand by that decision because I know darn well that I would still have just flipped around till I found what I was looking for, and I wouldn't have actually looked at the index. I also wouldn't have been good about updating the index, so that wouldn't have ended up working anyway. There were several things that annoyed me about this planner that I tried to fix in my next one. First of all, at the end of every month, I had to set up the next month's calendar. I couldn't set those up in advance because it depended on how many planner pages I used through the month for my daily planning, which basically constrained me to 1 month at a time. Of course, that was frustrating. I could only plan at best 31 days in advance, and I hated having to take the time to set this whole thing up every month in the middle of trying to get other things done. Second of all, I started this planner in June, as I mentioned, and I didn't leave any space for yearly goals or to-dos. Also, these larger lists, or spreads as they're usually called, were just kind of added willy-nilly into my daily task pages. This meant that I had to put tabs everywhere to mark where these things were, or I just had to flip through until I found what I was looking for. Additionally, these monthly to-do lists had to be rewritten every month and carried over each time. This was time-consuming and really annoying. I also sometimes had these brain dump pages scattered through, kind of whenever I felt overwhelmed with tasks. Getting them out of my head and onto the page was a good thing, but I didn't necessarily then go back and incorporate those things into my daily task lists, sometimes because I didn't know where those brain dump pages were. Often, these brain dumps included larger tasks that couldn't be done in just one day, so I couldn't put them on just one day's list, which basically meant they didn't get done. That really didn't help me manage my productivity or my stress levels. This first bullet journal was a good move for me though, because it allowed me to see more of what I needed from a planning system, and I did make some changes going into 2018. This absolutely beautiful book here is literally German engineered bullet journaling perfection. It's a Nuna brand notebook that I bought when my husband and I were in Dublin on our honeymoon in 2018. I think I showed great restraint in waiting until 2018 to start using it for bullet journaling. I also had it in this cover, which is the only one I could find that was big enough to cover this notebook and also had a string mechanism to keep it tied closed. This was a lifesaver because otherwise my bullet journal was just unprotected and flopping around all over the place in my bag all the time. That's why a lot of the design on this is rubbed off kind of weirdly. Right from the beginning, we can see that I did learn from my mistakes in the 2017 bullet journal. First of all, I have the calendar pages for the entire year right at the beginning of the book. They're also color-coded because for some reason that was really important to me at the time. Really what happened is I bought a set of mild liners and was like, okay, I need to use these immediately. I'm going to color code something right now. You can see I'm also using the calendar a bit more for deadlines, travel, etc. We did also do a ton of travel this year, so that ended up really coming in handy. I've also got my goals for the year listed right up front. I can't say that I really referred to them too much, but that also explains why a lot of them didn't happen. I also added a yearly to-do list right at the beginning. I'm glad I didn't have to transfer these over every month, but again, I also didn't end up referring to this list very often, so like my goals, a lot of these things didn't happen. Finally, I had the foresight to leave some space for longer-term spreads up front instead of having to intersperse them with my daily task lists. I didn't end up leaving myself quite enough room though, so as the year goes on, I do have these spreads mixed in with my dailies. In 2018, I still have habit trackers every month, and incredibly, I really did update them. I was also trying out this weekly dashboard thing that I thought I was so genius for coming up with. It's really funny to me now because my current journal actually has this exact same weekly dashboard. Yet again, I have brain dumps just kind of living in with my daily task lists, which means these things go into a kind of task purgatory and never happen. For the first couple weeks of my spring 2018 semester, I was making these study to-do spreads, with everything I needed to do for each subject over the next week. That was a really great way for me to see and manage my workload, but it was kind of time-consuming to set up and annoying to have to write all that down. So I ended up just doing the same thing, color-coded, of course, in Notion by the end of the year. In this journal, I was also printing out pictures I found on Pinterest or Instagram and adding them into the pages here. It makes it more aesthetic for sure, but it also took a decent amount of time. During summer, I was doing a study abroad program, so I made these pages showing all the homework I had for each class over the 8-week program. This was really helpful to me. And by the way, I did actually complete more of these things than it seemed. I just didn't update this in the last week or two of class because, I was going through finals. However, it was kind of annoying to have these pages just in the middle of other things. This is one of my favorite pages in this planner. It's a countdown I made for all the days I was in Paris for my fall study abroad session. My husband was doing a training program in Oregon, so he and I were long distance for 4 months. This countdown tracker kind of kept me sane, and I loved filling in each day because that meant I was another day closer to seeing him again. I made another one of these class overviews for my fall semester classes, but a couple of them didn't stick very closely to the syllabus, or didn't have assignments laid out on the syllabus. I didn't end up keeping this up long term. It ended up making more sense to just have weekly lists instead of semesterly ones. Having it all written down like this also meant that I couldn't easily change anything, or add in stuff that the professors decided to throw at us. This was the last time I tried to lay it all out like this because I realized it just wasn't workable. In October and November, I really have just gone back to monthly to-do lists that roll over every month. This year's bullet journal was for sure an improvement over the previous years in terms of workability, but it did still have its faults. I still had the issue of a big yearly or monthly task list that had to be rolled over every month, and didn't really get done because of that. My brain dump pages of more tasks were still just getting lost because they were inserted randomly. I hadn't left enough space for larger spreads at the beginning of the book, so those were also spread throughout the year and kind of fell into purgatory. Finally, during my fall semester of 2018, I was writing a bit every day in a small journal I'd bought. I really wanted to incorporate that into my next year's planner, to have a day's tasks plus a bit of journaling from that day on the same page, instead of having to carry around 2 separate books. That brings us to 2019. This is another Nuna notebook that I bought while I was in Paris, and I spent some time setting this up for the next year. I also started adding these color-coded stickers to my events. You can see that I also dropped the monthly color-coded calendars in favor of a more minimal design. Weekdays were highlighted in gray and weekends in green. I really like this, and my current planner has a similar sort of division. I only ended up using this bullet journal through the first part of June, and I think you'll see why. I did leave some more room up front for spreads, but didn't end up needing all that space because, like I said, I ended up switching to a different planner halfway through the year. You can also see here the beginning of my books on the shelf list that's now housed in Notion. I go over this in more detail in my Notion video, so I'll link that below for you to check out. The actual planning pages I used look just the same as 2018's, down to the brain dump pages and the homework lists that I apparently decided to try doing on paper again. By March, April, they're off the paper and fully digital in Notion. I also tried doing a separate calendar tracker thing for my workouts. This ended up getting moved to Notion as well. So I broke up with bullet journaling in 2019 because I was getting into Notion, and that took care of a lot of the long-term stuff that I'd been capturing in my bullet journal. With all that out of the way and housed digitally, I realized that I could play around with some more traditional planners. I was excited about this because I was starting to get tired of how labor-intensive it was to set up a bullet journal all the time. Everything has to come from you, from the overall calendars to the dailies and everything in between. I just felt like I was spending so much time on that and not nearly enough time on actual tasks. It really felt like productivity was being subsumed by setup and aesthetics. So, naturally, I turned to Hobonichi. Let me explain. These planners are their own cult. People wax poetic about the Tomo River paper, which plays nicely with fountain pens, and about this all-in-one planning system that has a yearly calendar, weekly spreads, and daily pages. I was curious, sucked in by beautiful pictures of fully checked off task lists, and I thought, this must be the answer. So I bought one. I got the Hobonichi Avec, which runs from July 1st to December 31st of 2019. I repapered it because the bare journal itself just looks blah to me, and then I stuck that baby in a clear plastic cover because I stained the paper immediately. This planner did end up working for me in a lot of ways. The calendar worked for me well, since the boxes had plenty of room. However, there's this whole chunk of the planner that's weekly layouts. Some people absolutely freaking love these and do basically all their planning on this weekly sheet. I don't understand this. I don't lay stuff out by hours, so the timeline on the side here isn't useful to me at all, and it never feels like there's enough room for me with these teeny columns to actually write down tasks or to do any daily journaling. It's just way too narrow and I can't do it. Something I liked about this type of one page per day daily layout is that I didn't have to try to keep a cohesive aesthetic. I felt like I could use funky stickers or doodle on the page or play around with brush pens, and I didn't have to think about what it looked like because I was already on to the next page. Of course, there were some things I didn't like about this planner as well. First of all, there were a lot of pages that were useless to me. The weekly spreads, for instance, weren't used at all. Again, this isn't a huge issue, but it did annoy me. There are also a bunch of pages at the back of the planner, all in Japanese about various subjects. I didn't end up using these at all. Additionally, when I was ordering this planner, all of the English versions were sold out, so I bought the Japanese one. This means that the quote at the bottom of each daily page is in Japanese. It's of course a minor thing, but it just kind of bugged me having a bunch of stuff in this planner that I couldn't even read. For a lot of the days, I covered over the quote part with washi tape and stickers, which was fun from a decorating standpoint, but also made the bottom of the planner pretty bulky. Toward the end of the planner here, you can see that my use of it dropped off a lot. That's due to two things. One, I always put less time into this sort of thing when my semesters get crazy. And two, at the end of October, I got an iPad Pro, and I started flirting with the idea of going fully digital with my planning. Spoiler alert, digital planning doesn't seem to work for me, but I can understand why I thought it would. Let's break it down. First of all my long-term lists are in Notion, and have been for quite some time. This works really well for me, and I don't see this changing in the near future. So I'm already at least partly digital with my planning. Second of all, I carry my iPad with me everywhere these days. Or at least I did when I went places. If I could just carry my iPad instead of my iPad and a planner, that would be really convenient. Third, I really like writing things by hand, highlighting them, adding decoration, etc. And that's why I've stuck with paper planning for so long. But you can do all those things in a digital planner too, as well as things you can't do on paper, like easily shift text or photos around, copy and paste things, and add or delete any pages of the planner that you want to. You could have a 1,000-page planner that won't add any extra weight to what you already carry with you. Plus, you don't have to worry about carrying pens, highlighters, sticky notes, washi tape, stickers, or anything else with you, because it's all on your device already. So you can see why I was intrigued, right? And I tried! Hand to God, I tried. I bought a digital planner off Etsy and gave it my best shot. Digital planning sounds like a great idea for me. But here's what I don't like about it. It's not paper planning. I don't stick with it for some reason, so it's useless to me. Literally, that's it. But apparently that's enough. Because it turns out that the very action of writing something down on paper makes me 87.9% more likely to follow through and actually do that thing per current scientific estimate. There seems to be something about my knowing, if I don't do this thing, I'll have to write it down again tomorrow. That makes me incentivized to actually do the thing. Crossing things off my list is for some reason so much more rewarding when it's done with pen and paper and not with stylus and digital ink. I remember to add tasks to my plan or to cross them off when I have a physical planner sitting there reminding me to do so. If it's just another app on my device, it's so easy to not do that and just do something else instead. Like Netflix. I would also like to note that because I'm a giant nerd, I actually did the math to figure out the cost per day of this digital planning system. I paid $19.99 for the first digital planner I bought in 2020, and I used it for a grand total of 14 days. That means I paid $1.43 for each day of those 2 weeks that I used this planner. For the second planner, which I bought in the autumn of 2020, I spent $13.78 and used it for 23 days. Better, but still not great. That works out to 59 cents per day. This may not mean much, but let's compare that to the planner I'm using in 2021. I paid $39.99 for it, and as of the 16th of March, I've used it every day this year, 74 days. So that works out to 54 cents a day. It's already cheaper. And of course, that cost per day will get lower for each day that I continue to use it this year. So that takes us through about the first half of January 2020. Me trying to make digital planning and journaling work, and failing at it because it's just not the way I think. Not knowing where to go from there, but painfully aware of my last semester at Columbia looming, I rebounded to an ex-love, the bullet journal. Sometimes you need one last shot to know why you walked away, right? I think you can tell from the layout of this that I really wasn't invested. The calendar only has the first couple months filled out, none of my longer term spreads actually made it to fruition here, and I tried out a bunch of different daily layouts that didn't work well for me either. I will say that one thing did come out of this bullet journal. I did like splitting each page into half and using that for my daily list. It was a good size and allowed me to put stuff on my list a couple days in advance. Funnily enough, that is the same format that my current planner uses. Maybe I would have ended up filling all this stuff out and giving bullet journaling another real shot, but yeah, a lot of shit happened in 2020. so I didn't end up going anywhere or doing anything that would necessitate actual planning. I scraped by through my last semester at Columbia, my thesis, and the rest of 2020 with just Notion and then a daily task list that I sometimes made for myself in Apple Notes. Truly incredible to me that I managed to actually get things done with such a slap-together system, but there you have it. So for 2021, I ordered myself the Take a Note planner, which I learned about through a bullet journaling/planning group on Facebook. I have a full video up showing all the bits of this planner, along with how I've set it up for this year, which I'll link for you below in the description. But here's how it measures up in terms of pros and cons. The things I like about it include no stupid weekly section that I wouldn't use. Everything is in English, which is great. It has a minimal layout that I can then destroy with washi tape and stickers. There's no extraneous pages at the beginning or end. It has Tomoe River paper, which I do actually like now. It has that little weekly dashboard thing that I thought I invented. It has a good yearly calendar. The daily pages have a good sized section for tasks and still enough room at the bottom for a bit of daily journaling. There are no extra pages, which means that any brain dump stuff goes directly into Notion where it belongs. Alright, now for the cons. I need to be the bridge between the tasks that are living in Notion and the daily list of things that I have to do, and sometimes I'm not the most reliable bridge. Of course, it has all the constraints of paper planning, since it's paper planning. And I don't know, sometimes I don't feel like writing stuff down because I somehow feel like that means I get to have a day off. That's it. Those are all the cons, and those are more personal issues than anything else. So far, this is working really well for me. However, I am aware that it's only a couple months into 2021, so things could very well change. Fingers crossed, though, that this is my true planner love and we can ride happily into a productive future together. Wow, I'm impressed you're still watching. It seems like you and I should be friends, if we aren't already, because, like I said at the beginning of this video, showing people my planner is my way of making friends. And if you stuck around this long, you and I have a lot in common. You should subscribe to this channel because I've got some other great videos coming. I'm going to be showing how each part of my planning system works together, more in-depth Notion content, as well as just more productivity stuff in general. Of course, also feel free to comment if you just have questions. If it's not clear by now, I love talking about planners, and I'd love to talk to you about planners. Thanks again for watching, and see you in the next video.